The year 2479 had not been kind to humanity. Earth was gone, not destroyed in the dramatic fashion of ancient films, but slowly rendered uninhabitable through cascading ecological collapse. The billions who once called the blue planet home had been reduced to mere thousands, scattered across hastily established orbital habitats and makeshift colonies on moons never meant to sustain human life. Captain Mira Solari stood at the observation deck of Galactic Union Station, Zenith 9, watching as the last shuttle of human refugees docked with the vessel that would become their home for the foreseeable future. The Aegis of Hope hardly lived up to its grandiose name. The transport ship was ancient by Union standards, a decommissioned Class C hauler that had spent most of its operational life moving mining equipment to the outer reaches. "This bucket cost more to talk about than to fly," Mira muttered, tracing a finger along a rust spot on the window frame. At 43, she carried herself with the rigid posture of someone who had spent her adult life in military service. Her once vibrant auburn hair was now streaked with premature gray, and fine lines radiated from the corners of her eyes, souvenirs from witnessing Earth's final gasps. "The Union salvage crew says she'll fly, Captain," came a voice from behind her. Jax Marino approached, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that seemed dirtier than his fingers. At 26, the engineering prodigy had been fast-tracked through the Earth Defense Corps before the evacuation. Now, like everyone else, his talents were redirected toward survival. "And will she stop, Jax? Or are we planning to just keep going until we hit something solid?" Mira's dry humor had become her shield against despair. Jax offered a crooked smile. "I've got some ideas about the propulsion system. We might squeeze another 20% efficiency out of her. Make it 30 and I'll authorize double dessert rations for engineering." "Deal." He hesitated, then added more seriously. "The last group is mostly children. Captain, orphans from the Auckland biodome collapse." Mira's expression softened. "Get Dr. Voss to meet them. They'll need psychological evaluations before we assign quarters." As Jax departed, Commander Ro Tal approached, his steps measured and deliberate. The blue-skinned Proximan served as the Union's official liaison to the human contingent, and his perpetually furrowed brow suggested he considered the assignment beneath his qualifications. "Captain Solari, Admiral Zephyros requests your presence at the handover ceremony. It begins in 30 minutes in Docking Bay 7. "Inform the Admiral I'll be there," Mira replied, straightening her worn uniform jacket, one of the few remaining symbols of Earth's once proud Space Force. Tal remained, his three-fingered hand adjusting the collar of his immaculate Union uniform. "The Council is concerned about your proposed navigation charts. The Helios sector has not been properly surveyed. The Council has provided us with exactly one option. Commander, a ship that belongs in a museum and coordinates to a planet they've never bothered to confirm is habitable." Mira turned to face him fully. "Unless they'd like to offer alternatives, we'll proceed as planned." The Proximan's expression remained neutral, but the slight pulse of color beneath his translucent skin betrayed his discomfort. "The Union has been generous in accepting human refugees. Captain, resources are finite." "Yes," Mira said, her voice even. "I'm becoming increasingly aware of how finite the Union's generosity is." Tal opened his mouth to respond, but was interrupted by Dr. Elena Voss, who emerged from the corridor with a small figure trailing behind her. "Captain," Voss called, her voice carrying the faint accent of Earth's former Eastern European territories. Tall and willowy, with close-cropped silver hair that belied her 50 years. The xenopsychologist had once been renowned for her work in understanding non-human social structures. "I'd like you to meet someone." The child behind Voss couldn't have been more than 10, small, even for that age, with wide eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her dark hair was pulled into 2 uneven braids, and she clutched a tattered stuffed animal. "This is Surile," Voss said gently. She was assigned to the Aegis unaccompanied, but I believe she has potential that could be valuable to our mission. Mira crouched to the child's eye level. Hello, Suri. I'm Captain Solari. The girl stared back, unblinking. Are you going to save us like you tried to save Earth? The bluntness of the question caught Mira off guard. She heard Tal shift uncomfortably behind her. I'm going to do everything in my power to get us all to a new home, she answered honestly. Suri considered this, then nodded once, as if confirming a private theory. My mom said sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what you're made of. She held up her stuffed animal, a faded blue creature that might once have resembled a dolphin. This is Admiral Splash. He's not scared of anything. Mira fought back a smile. It's good to have brave officers. Welcome aboard, Suri. As Dr. Voss led the child away, Mira stood, finding Tal watching her with an inscrutable expression. These ceremonies are mere formalities, he said, but they matter to the Admiral. Then we shouldn't keep him waiting, Mira replied, casting one last glance at the Aegis of Hope through the viewport. The ship's hull bore the marks of hasty repairs, mismatched plating, and visible weld lines where components had been replaced. It wasn't pretty, but it was theirs. Perhaps the only thing that was truly theirs anymore. The handover ceremony took place in a cavernous docking bay that made the Aegis look even smaller by comparison. Admiral Zephyros, a towering Centaurian with the characteristic ridge of bony plates running from his forehead to the base of his neck, stood on a hastily erected platform before a small gathering of Union officials and human representatives. As Mira took her place in the front row, she noted the absence of the usual ceremonial trappings. No honor guard, no music, just the Admiral, a data tablet, and the distinct impression that everyone wanted this over with as quickly as possible. Captain Solari, Zephyros began, his resonant voice carrying easily through the bay. On behalf of the Galactic Union Council, I present you with command authorization for transport vessel THX 1138, henceforth designated Aegis of Hope. He extended the tablet with a gesture that suggested he was handing over a piece of trash. Mira stepped forward to accept it, conscious of the eyes upon her. This moment, underwhelming as it was, represented the culmination of months of desperate negotiation, humanity literally begging for scraps from the Union's table. The Council wishes you safe passage, Zephyros continued, the words hollow. Then, leaning slightly forward, he added in a lower tone, Enjoy your tin can, Captain. Don't break it, or we won't notice. The insult was delivered with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mira felt heat rise in her cheeks, but maintained her composure. This wasn't the time or place to jeopardize what little they had. On behalf of humanity, I accept command, she replied formally, conscious of the weight of those words. Nearly 8,000 souls would soon depend on her leadership, and on this ship that even its previous owners had deemed expendable. The ceremony concluded with minimal fanfare, and as the Union officials filed out, Mira found herself approached by a familiar face. Dr. Voss moved to her side, speaking in a hushed tone. There's been a development. Union security just detained 2 of our engineering crew for attempting to access restricted technical archives. Mira's stomach tightened. On whose authority? Zephyros himself. They were trying to download propulsion schematics, ones that might have helped Jax with his modifications. Before Mira could respond, alarms blared throughout the docking bay. Red emergency lights bathed the space in an ominous glow as a computerized voice announced, Attention all personnel. Communication systems experiencing critical failure. Security protocols activated. Please remain at your stations. Commander Tal approached rapidly, his skin pulsing with agitated blue patterns. The flagship's communications array has gone offline. All outbound transmissions are down. Sabotage? Mira asked sharply. Unknown, Tal replied, but his expression suggested he had suspicions. Admiral Zephyros has ordered all ships to remain docked until the situation is resolved. Mira exchanged a glance with Dr. Voss. They'd been granted a departure window that had taken weeks to negotiate. Any delay could push back their launch by months. Months they didn't have, with supplies already stretched thin. "How long?" Mira demanded. Tal's third eyelid flickered, a sign of discomfort among his species. The Admiral did not specify. Days, perhaps weeks. "Unacceptable," Mira said flatly. "Our departure clearance was confirmed. Our people are already aboard. These are security protocols. Captain, they cannot be circumvented." A decision crystallized in Mira's mind, one that she knew would have far-reaching consequences. "Commander, please inform the Admiral that the Aegis of Hope acknowledges his order." She turned to Dr. Voss. "Get to the ship. Tell Jax to prepare for immediate departure." "Captain," Tal began, his tone warning. "We have children aboard." "Commander," Mira cut him off. "Children who have already lost everything once. I won't ask them to wait in limbo while the Union sorts out its technical difficulties." "This is a violation of direct orders," Tal insisted, lowering his voice. "The consequences will be mine to bear." Mira finished for him. "You have your duty, Commander. I have mine." With that, she turned and strode toward the boarding tube that connected the station to the Aegis, her mind racing. They were leaving with half the supplies they'd been promised, with systems untested, with a crew barely familiar with the ship. But they were leaving. The universe had already taken Earth from humanity. Mira would be damned if she let it take their future too. Aboard the Aegis, chaos reigned as crew members rushed to prepare for an unexpected departure. Jax's voice crackled over the ship's internal communications. "Captain to the bridge. Repeat, Captain to the bridge." Mira hurried through corridors packed with confused civilians, many still carrying the meager possessions they'd brought from Earth. The ship's layout was utilitarian at best, with narrow passages and exposed conduits running along bulkheads. Every surface bore the marks of age and hard use. When she reached the bridge, a cramped, semicircular room dominated by outdated control consoles, she found Jax hunched over the navigation station, his fingers flying across the interface. "Talk to me," she ordered, taking her place in the captain's chair, a rigid seat that offered neither comfort nor authority. "Union Control is denying our departure request," Jax reported without looking up. "They've locked the docking clamps. Override them. Working on it, but their systems are fighting back. We've got maybe 3 minutes before they send security." Dr. Voss entered the bridge, slightly breathless. "The civilians are secured, but they're frightened. Rumors are spreading that the Union is reneging on our agreement." "They're not entirely wrong," Mira muttered. "Status of the Union flagship?" "Still dark," Jax replied. "But I'm picking up increased activity in the defense grid. They're powering weapons." Mira's hand tightened on the armrest. "They wouldn't fire on a civilian transport." "Wouldn't they?" Voss asked quietly. The moment hung between them. The unspoken reality that humanity's value to the Galactic Union had diminished with each passing year since Earth's habitability crisis began. From valued trading partners to refugees to... what? An inconvenience? A cautionary tale? "Got it," Jax exclaimed as the ship lurched slightly. "Docking clamps released. Thrusters are responsive." "Take us out," Mira ordered. "Standard departure vector, then full burn once we clear the station's defense perimeter." The Aegis groaned as its ancient engines powered up, the deck plates vibrating beneath their feet. On the main view screen, Zenith 9 began to recede, its gleaming spires a stark contrast to the utilitarian vessel pulling away from it. "Union Control is demanding we return to dock," Jax reported, his expression grim. "They're threatening to revoke our colony charter." "Record their transmission, then cut communications," Mira instructed. "We'll deal with the political fallout once we're safely away." Captain, Dr. Voss said, her voice low. Commander Tal is requesting permission to come aboard. He's at Airlock 3. Mira frowned. The commander? Why would he? He says he's been ordered to accompany us, to ensure compliance with Union protocols. A spy, you mean? Jax muttered. Or a hostage, Mira countered, considering their options. Having a Union official aboard could complicate things, but it might also provide some leverage if the situation deteriorated further. Let him aboard, but restrict his access to non-essential systems. As the Aegis pushed further from the station, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. The ship's sensors showed no pursuit yet, but Mira knew that could change in an instant. We're approaching the defense perimeter, Jax announced. Prepare for full burn on my mark, Mira replied, leaning forward in her chair. The turbolift doors opened, admitting Commander Tal, who appeared distinctly uncomfortable. Captain Solari, I must formally protest this departure. You are in violation of... Noted, Commander. Mira cut him off. You're welcome to file a full report once we reach our destination. In the meantime, I suggest you find quarters. This could be a long journey. Tal's skin flushed a deeper blue. Admiral Zephyros has authorized me to assume command if necessary. Has he? Mira turned to face him fully. Interesting timing, given the communications blackout. Do you have written orders to that effect? The Proximan hesitated, and Mira knew she had him. Without the flagship's communications, he couldn't verify his authority, and she had no intention of surrendering her ship on his word alone. Defense perimeter in 10 seconds, Jax called out. Mark, Mira responded, returning her attention to the view screen. Execute full burn. The Aegis lurched forward as its main engines engaged, pushing the ancient vessel to speeds its designers had likely never intended. The stars on the view screen elongated slightly as the ship accelerated away from Zenith 9. No pursuit, Jax confirmed after a tense minute. We're clear. A collective exhale seemed to pass through the bridge. They had done it, taken the first step toward an uncertain future, in a ship that even its previous owners had deemed disposable. Captain, Dr. Voss said quietly. What now? Mira met her gaze steadily. Now we prove them wrong. Set course for the Helios sector. Let's find our new home. As the Aegis of Hope pushed deeper into space, leaving behind the last outpost of the civilization that had reluctantly sheltered them, Mira couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were just beginning. The Union had given humans the weakest ship in their fleet, whether out of necessity or calculation. She couldn't say. But humans had survived worse, and they would survive this too. The first 48 hours aboard the Aegis passed in a blur of activity as the crew worked to familiarize themselves with the aging ship systems. Jax had assembled a team of engineers, most with only theoretical knowledge of spacecraft maintenance, to address the most critical issues. It's like they deliberately gave us the worst ship in the fleet, he complained during a status meeting in what passed for the captain's ready room, a converted storage closet adjacent to the bridge. Half the life support regulators are running on backup power, and the primary reactor coolant system leaks like a sieve. Mira studied the schematics displayed on the wall-mounted screen. Focus on critical systems first. Life support, propulsion, navigation, anything cosmetic can wait. With respect, Captain, nothing about this rust bucket is cosmetic, Jax retorted. We're finding jury-rigged repairs beneath jury-rigged repairs. It's a miracle this thing made it to Zenith 9, let alone beyond. Dr. Voss, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. What about the Soulfire project? Will the power constraints affect implementation? Mira exchanged a glance with Jax. The Soulfire resonator had been humanity's most closely guarded secret, a device that could capture and project human emotional states with unprecedented fidelity. Originally developed for therapeutic purposes, its potential as a defensive weapon had only been theorized. We've allocated independent power supplies, Mira assured her. The core components were transferred aboard before departure. Commander Tal, who had been reluctantly included in the meeting, frowned. I was not briefed on any Soulfire project. All technological assets were to be catalogued and approved by Union oversight. It was classified as medical equipment, Mira replied smoothly. Dr. Voss can provide the relevant documentation. Before Tal could protest further, the ship lurched violently, throwing them all against the nearest bulkhead. Emergency klaxons wailed as the lights flickered, then dimmed to the red glow of backup systems. "Report!" Mira shouted into her communicator as she steadied herself. The bridge officer's voice came through, distorted by static. "Life support failure on decks 3 through 5. Emergency bulkheads failing to engage." "Evacuate those decks," Mira ordered, already moving toward the door. "Jax, meet me at the primary life support hub. Dr. Voss, coordinate emergency medical response." As they rushed through corridors now filled with frightened civilians, Mira saw firsthand the consequences of the Union's generosity. The Aegis's emergency systems were responding sluggishly, if at all. Families huddled together as crew members directed them toward safer areas, the fear on their faces a stark reminder of what was at stake. They reached the life support hub to find it in chaos. Warning lights flashed across control panels, and the acrid smell of burned circuitry filled the air. 2 technicians were desperately trying to reroute systems, but Mira could see they were fighting a losing battle. "The main atmospheric processor just failed," one reported, face pale beneath a sheen of sweat. "No warning, no gradual degradation. 1 minute operational. The next—" "Sabotage?" Mira asked sharply. Jax had already pulled off an access panel and was examining the processor's internal components. "Not necessarily. This equipment is ancient. Looks like cascading system failure. 1 bad circuit triggered another, then another." He pointed to a series of charred components. "We need to replace these regulators, but we don't have spares." "What about the cargo bay?" Mira suggested. "There must be something we can salvage." "Maybe," Jax admitted. "But even if we find compatible parts, reconfiguring them will take hours. Those decks will be in vacuum before we finish." "Unacceptable," Mira stated flatly. "Find another way." Jax's expression hardened with determination. "I'll need Deck 7 evacuated. We're going to cannibalize the backup life support systems there. They're older, but compatible. It means no redundancy for that section, but it's better than losing 3 entire decks." "Do it," Mira authorized, already moving to help clear the affected area. For the next 4 hours, Jax led a desperate operation to salvage and repurpose components, while Mira coordinated the evacuation of affected sections. Throughout the crisis, she was acutely aware of Commander Tal observing their efforts, his expression unreadable. When the atmospheric processors finally hummed back to life, restoring breathable air to the endangered decks, the relief was palpable. But the cost had been high. 2 crew members injured in the evacuation, critical components sacrificed, and, perhaps most devastating, confidence in their vessel severely shaken. "I want a complete diagnostic of all primary systems," Mira ordered as she returned to the bridge, exhaustion evident in the set of her shoulders. "If there are more weak points, I want to know before they fail." "Captain," the communications officer called. "We're receiving a transmission. It's weak, but it appears to be from Zenith 9. Mira's fatigue vanished instantly. On screen, the view screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Zephyros's stern visage, though the image was distorted by interference. "Captain Solari," his voice crackled. "Your unauthorized departure constitutes a direct violation of Union security protocols. You are hereby ordered to return to Zenith 9 immediately." "Admiral," Mira replied, keeping her tone neutral, "we experienced a catastrophic life support failure that nearly killed hundreds of civilians. I suspect your generous gift was not as space-worthy as claimed." Zephyros's expression didn't change. The Aegis of Hope was certified by Union engineers. Any failures must be attributed to operator error or deliberate sabotage. His eyes shifted slightly. Commander Tal, assert control as per contingency protocols. All eyes on the bridge turned to Tal, who stood rigidly near the tactical station. For a moment, tension hung in the air, like a physical presence. Then, to Mira's surprise, he stepped forward and addressed the screen. "Admiral, I cannot comply at this time. The situation aboard the Aegis requires further assessment before any change in command can be considered." Zephyros's face darkened with anger. "You forget yourself, Commander. This is a direct order." "With respect, sir," Tal continued, his voice steady, despite the slight fluctuation in his skin coloration. "Union Protocol 3 Westfontein requires that I first establish that current leadership is endangering the mission. Captain Solari's actions, while unorthodox, have preserved both ship and crew under difficult circumstances." The Admiral's jaw tightened visibly. "Very well, Commander. I expect daily reports on the Aegis's status and on Captain Solari's decisions." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. Mira turned to Tal, reassessing the Proximan. "Thank you, Commander." Tal's expression remained formal. "Do not misunderstand, Captain. I still represent Union interests, but I will not be party to actions that endanger civilians, human or otherwise." Before Mira could respond, Jax's voice came urgently over the comm system. "Captain to Cargo Bay 2, we've got a situation." When Mira arrived at the cargo bay, she found chaos. The artificial gravity had malfunctioned, causing supply crates to float freely throughout the massive space. Crew members were attempting to secure the larger containers, but some had already collided with the walls and burst open, their contents becoming dangerous projectiles. In the midst of it all, to Mira's horror, was little Surile somehow having evaded the evacuation order. The child was curled into a ball, clinging to a support strut as containers drifted menacingly around her. "Get a tether team in here now," Mira ordered, grabbing a safety line from a nearby emergency station and securing it to her belt. Without waiting for assistance, she launched herself into the zero-gravity environment, using practiced movements to navigate toward the stranded child. "Suri," she called as she approached. "I need you to stay very still. I'm coming to get you." The girl's eyes were wide with terror, but she managed a small nod. Her stuffed animal, Admiral Splash, floated a few meters away, just out of reach. As Mira closed the distance, a massive supply container suddenly shifted, propelled by an air current from a ventilation duct. It rotated ponderously, its trajectory bringing it directly towards Suri's position. "Captain!" Jax shouted from the entrance. 3 o'clock! Mira saw the danger and accelerated, pushing off from a passing crate. She reached Suri just as the massive container loomed over them, its shadow engulfing them both. "Hold on to me," she instructed, wrapping an arm securely around the child. With her free hand, she fired the manual propulsion unit on her belt, sending them veering sharply away from the strut and from the path of the oncoming container. They weren't going to make it. The container was too close, their momentum too slow. Suddenly, Suri released her grip on Mira, pushed away with surprising strength, and extended her small hands toward the approaching mass. "Stop!" she cried, her voice somehow cutting through the chaos of the cargo bay. To Mira's astonishment, the container seemed to hesitate in its path, rotating slightly to present its narrowest profile as it passed them with mere centimeters to spare. No time to process what had happened. Mira secured her grip on Suri and maneuvered them toward the safety of the bay entrance, where Jax and a medical team waited. "Admiral Splash," Suri whispered as they approached safety. "We can't leave him." Mira glanced back to see the stuffed animal still floating amidst the chaos. Before she could respond, Commander Tal appeared beside them, his long limbs gracefully navigating the zero-gravity environment. With a precise movement, He captured the toy and returned to the entrance just as Mira and Suri reached safety. "I believe this officer was separated from his post," Tal said, handing the stuffed animal to Suri with surprising gentleness. As gravity was restored and the situation gradually brought under control, Dr. Voss examined Suri, while Mira conferred with Jax about the gravity malfunction. "Another system failure?" she asked quietly. Jax shook his head, his expression grim. "Not this time. Someone manually overrode the gravity controls from a maintenance terminal. By the time the system registered the change, it was too late to prevent the cascade." "Sabotage," Mira concluded, the word bitter on her tongue. "Without a doubt. But why? And who?" Jax glanced around the cargo bay, now being painstakingly reorganized by crew members. "Everyone on this ship has a stake in our survival." "Not everyone," Mira murmured, her gaze finding Commander Tal, who was speaking with Dr. Voss. Despite his unexpected support on the bridge, she couldn't dismiss the possibility that he was following a more complex set of orders. Later, in the ship's small medical bay, Dr. Voss pulled Mira aside while Suri slept, sedated after her ordeal. "There's something you should know about the girl," Voss said, her voice pitched low. "During the incident, her neuroscan readings were unusual." "Unusual how?" "Psionic activity," Voss replied simply. "Significant spikes corresponding exactly with the moment that container changed course." Mira's eyes widened. "Are you suggesting she moved it, telekinetically?" "I'm suggesting her brain was doing something extraordinary at precisely that moment," Voss clarified. "The Union has documented cases of latent psionic abilities in various species, including humans, though they're exceedingly rare." "Does Tal know?" Voss shook her head. "I've classified her medical records. But Mira..." She hesitated. "If Suri does possess these abilities, they're likely to manifest more strongly as she grows. She could be an asset or a complication." "She's a child, Elena," Mira said firmly. "Not a weapon." "Of course," Voss agreed. "But in our current situation, every advantage matters." The conversation was interrupted by Jax's arrival. "Captain, we've completed the preliminary diagnostics. You're going to want to see this." In the engineering section, Jax displayed a holographic schematic of the Aegis's critical systems. Nearly half were highlighted in alarming red. "It's worse than we thought," he explained. "The Union techs who prepared this ship for us, they did the bare minimum to get systems operational, but they left underlying structural issues untouched. We've got microfractures in the secondary hull, coolant degradation in the propulsion system, and power relays that are literally held together with outdated bonding agents." "Can we repair them?" Mira asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Some, yes. Others would require a full space dock and resources we don't have." Jax ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Captain, this ship wasn't meant to make the journey we're asking of it. The Union must have known that when they gave it to us. The implication hung heavy in the air. Had humanity been set up to fail? Given a vessel that would break down beyond rescue range, solving the human problem without the Union having to explicitly deny them aid?" "We work with what we have," Mira said finally. "Prioritize the systems most likely to fail catastrophically. Anything that will just make the journey uncomfortable. We'll live with it." As she turned to leave, Commander Tal appeared in the doorway. "Captain, we need to discuss the supply manifest." Mira sighed internally. "What about it, Commander?" "Union protocols require that all non-essential items be jettisoned to conserve power and life support resources," Tal stated. "I've identified several categories of cargo that should be offloaded immediately." "Show me," Mira demanded. Tal produced a data tablet displaying a list that made Mira's blood boil. The non-essential items included cultural artifacts, educational materials, and, most significantly, the specialized emotion recording drives that were integral to the Soulfire project. These items remain, she said flatly, handing the tablet back. Captain, the regulations are clear. Power consumption must be minimized to... The regulations were written for Union ships with Union priorities. Mira cut him off. This is a human vessel now. And for humans, these items aren't luxuries. They're necessities for long-term psychological health. The emotional recording devices alone draw power equivalent to a full deck's life support, Tal argued. They stay, Mira insisted, her tone leaving no room for debate. If you wish to file a formal protest with the Admiral, you're welcome to do so once we re-establish reliable communications. As Tal departed, clearly displeased, Jax gave Mira a questioning look. You know he's right about the power consumption. Those drives are eating into our reserves. I know, Mira admitted. But the Soulfire Resonator is our insurance policy. If we encounter hostility, from the Union or anyone else, it may be our only effective defense. A weapon we've never actually tested, Jax pointed out. We're betting a lot on theoretical technology, Captain. Sometimes, theory is all we have, Mira replied, her gaze distant. Humanity survived on Earth for thousands of years by imagining solutions before they existed. We'll do it again. That night, unable to sleep, Mira found herself wandering the ship's corridors. The Aegis hummed around her, its aged systems working valiantly to keep its human cargo alive. She passed families who had converted storage bays into living quarters, children who played quiet games in converted maintenance tunnels, engineers who worked tirelessly to squeeze every bit of efficiency from reluctant machinery. These were her people now, not just her responsibility as a captain, but the last remnants of a world she had failed to save. The weight of that knowledge had haunted her since Earth's final evacuation, a constant companion that made each decision, each risk, impossibly heavy. Her wanderings brought her to Observation Deck 2, a small space with a viewport that offered a view of the stars streaming past. To her surprise, she found Suri seated on a bench before the window. Admiral Splash clutched to her chest. You should be resting, Mira said gently, taking a seat beside the child. Admiral Splash wanted to see the stars, Suri replied seriously. He says they look different out here. He's right, Mira agreed. They do. They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Suri spoke again. I did something today, in the cargo bay. Mira chose her words carefully. What do you think you did? I made the big box move, Suri said simply, as if discussing the weather. I didn't want it to hurt you, so I pushed it with my mind. That would be quite a special ability. Suri nodded. My mom said I was special. She said I could feel things other people couldn't. Her small face grew serious. Captain, there's something wrong with the ship. It's sad. Sad? Mira repeated, puzzled. It wants to help us, but it's tired. And someone is hurting it. Suri hugged Admiral Splash tighter. I can feel it when I try to sleep. Before Mira could process this strange statement, her communicator chirped. Captain, came Jax's urgent voice. We've got company. Long-range sensors have detected a Union vessel on an intercept course. On my way, Mira responded, standing quickly. She glanced down at Suri, who was watching her with those two perceptive eyes. You should return to your quarters, Suri. It's late. They're coming to take us back, the girl said quietly. They don't want us to find a new home. Mira hesitated, then crouched to meet Suri's gaze directly. I won't let that happen. I promise. As she hurried toward the bridge, Mira couldn't shake the child's words. Was it possible that Suri's apparent psionic abilities extended to some form of empathic connection with the ship itself? And if so, what did it mean that she sensed someone hurting the Aegis? Questions for later. Right now, they had more immediate concerns. On the bridge, the main view screen displayed a long-range sensor image of a sleek Union patrol vessel rapidly closing the distance between them. Hellhound class, Jax reported grimly. Fast, well-armed, and designed specifically for pursuit operations. Time to intercept? Mira asked, taking her command chair. 6 hours at current speeds. Less if they push their engines.
Are they hailing us?
The communications officer shook her head. No, Captain. They're maintaining complete silence. That's not standard procedure for a Union enforcement action, Mira noted, frowning. They should be demanding our surrender. Unless they're not here to bring us back, Dr. Voss suggested quietly, from her position near the science station. Perhaps they're here to ensure we don't return. The implication sent a chill through the bridge. The Union had been reluctant hosts to humanity from the beginning, viewing Earth's ecological collapse as a cautionary tale of mismanagement rather than the tragedy it was. If certain factions within the Union Council had decided that humans represented an ongoing drain on resources. Options? Mira asked, pushing aside the dark thoughts. We can't outrun them, Jax stated flatly. Even with the modifications we've made, the Aegis isn't built for speed. What about hiding? There's an asteroid field in the Carmel sector, approximately 2 hours from our current position. The patrol ship's sensors would cut through that like tissue paper, Jax replied. And the Aegis isn't maneuverable enough to use the asteroids as effective cover. Mira considered their limited choices. What if we stand and fight? An uncomfortable silence fell over the bridge. Everyone present knew the Aegis's armaments were defensive at best. Point defense lasers and a basic shield system that would offer minimal protection against military-grade weapons. The Soulfire Resonator, Dr. Voss said suddenly. It's our only real option. All eyes turned to her. The Resonator isn't combat-ready, Mira reminded her. We haven't even completed the full calibration sequence. We've been recording emotional imprints since we left Zenith 9, Voss insisted. Fear, hope, determination. The core matrix is saturated with authentic human responses. If we can amplify those patterns and direct them at the patrol ship. You're suggesting we use untested psychological warfare against a Union military vessel, Commander Tal interjected, having entered the bridge during the discussion. That would constitute a direct act of aggression. As opposed to what? Jax countered. Letting them blow us out of space without a fight? We don't know their intentions, Tal argued. Don't we? Mira fixed him with a steady gaze. Commander, you've served the Union faithfully, but you've also seen how they've treated us, given us a ship designed to fail, restricted our resources, and now sent armed pursuit without communication. What do your instincts tell you about their intentions? Tal's third eyelid flickered rapidly, a sign of internal conflict among his species. I cannot discount the possibility that certain elements within the Union military might consider permanent resolution of the human situation expedient. It was as close to an admission as they were likely to get. Mira nodded once. Decision made. Dr. Voss, begin Soulfire preparation. Jax, I need power rerouted to the resonance amplifiers. Commander Tal, she paused, studying the Proximan carefully. I need to know where you stand. With us, or with them? For a long moment, Tal was silent, his internal struggle visible in the rippling patterns beneath his skin. Then, with deliberate movement, he stepped forward and took position at the tactical station. I stand with the preservation of life, Captain. All life. Mira allowed herself a small nod of acknowledgement. Then, let's get to work. We have 6 hours to prepare a welcome they won't forget. The next few hours passed in a flurry of activity, as the crew prepared for their first, and potentially last, confrontation. The Soulfire Resonator, previously hidden within the ship's medical section, was brought online and moved to a more central location where its effects could be distributed throughout the ship. The device itself was deceptively simple in appearance. A spherical matrix of interlocking crystalline structures surrounding a core of specialized quantum processors. What made it unique was its ability to capture, amplify, and project human emotional states with unprecedented fidelity. The theory is straightforward, Dr. Voss explained, as she made final adjustments to the calibration. Most sentient species share basic emotional structures, regardless of their physiological differences. Fear, anger, joy. These experiences are universal. What varies is their intensity and expression. And humans feel emotions more strongly than most, Mira added, watching as technicians connected the final power couplings. Precisely. The Union has always considered this a weakness, our tendency toward emotional extremes. Voss's hands moved deftly across the control panel. The Soulfire resonator turns that perceived weakness into a weapon. It broadcasts emotional states at frequencies and intensities that most non-human neural structures simply aren't equipped to process. Like overloading a circuit, Jax suggested from where he was monitoring power levels. A crude but effective analogy, Voss agreed. The effect should be temporary disorientation at minimum, complete neural shutdown in extreme cases. And the risk to our own people? Mira asked. Voss hesitated. Minimal. In theory. The resonator is calibrated to human baselines. But, she added with professional candor, we've never tested it at full power. There could be feedback effects, particularly for individuals with heightened sensitivities. Mira's thoughts immediately went to Suri. I want all children and anyone with known neurological conditions moved to the most shielded sections of the ship. As preparations continued, Commander Tal approached Mira privately. Captain, there is something you should know. The patrol ship pursuing us. It's the Adamant Justice. Should that name mean something to me? It's Admiral Zephyros's personal escort vessel, Tal explained, his voice low. Typically deployed only for high-priority missions. The implications were clear. This wasn't a random patrol or even a standard retrieval operation. The Admiral himself had deemed humanity's escape important enough to send his personal ship. Why would Zephyros care this much about one obsolete transport? Mira wondered aloud. Perhaps he doesn't, Tal suggested. Perhaps it's what the transport carries that concerns him. The Soulfire technology, Mira realized. But how would he know? It was classified even within Earth's military. I cannot say, Tal replied. But the Admiral has extensive intelligence resources. If he somehow learned of its existence, he might see it as a threat to Union security, Mira finished. A human weapon that could potentially neutralize Union defenses. Such a weapon would upset the balance of power, Tal acknowledged, especially in the hands of a species the Union already views with suspicion. Before Mira could respond, the ship's alert system activated. Captain to the bridge, came the urgent call. The patrol ship has increased speed. New intercept time, 45 minutes. On the bridge, tension mounted as the sleek shape of the Adamant Justice grew larger on the view screen. True to Tal's information, the vessel bore the distinctive markings of an admiral's escort, streamlined and predatory, its weapons ports already open in unmistakable threat display. Still no hail, the communications officer reported. That answers any questions about their intentions, Jax muttered. Combat vessels don't approach with weapons hot unless they plan to use them. Status of the Soulfire resonator? Mira asked. Online but untested, Dr. Voss replied from her station. We've loaded the emotional recordings from the past 3 days, primarily fear, determination, and hope. The mixture should produce maximum disorientation in non-human neural patterns. And our shields? Jax grimaced. 20% capacity at best. They were designed to deflect space debris, not military-grade weapons. Intercept in 30 minutes, Tactical reported. Mira surveyed her bridge crew, human faces set with determination, along with Commander Tal's alien features, showing what she had come to recognize as concern. These people were looking to her for leadership, for a path through what seemed an impossible situation. Begin broadcasting standard Union distress signals, she ordered. Let's see if we can buy some time through confusion. Captain, Tactical called suddenly. Sensors are detecting multiple new contacts. Reading 15, no, 20 vessels on an intercept course from Sector 47. The view screen shifted to show a formation of ships emerging from the darkness of space. Their design was unmistakable, the angular, predatory silhouettes of Union Vanguard dreadnoughts. The Vanguard Division, Tal breathed, his skin paling to a lighter blue. This is unprecedented. The Vanguard is the Union's elite combat force, deployed only in times of war. Apparently, they consider us worth the effort, Mira said grimly. Time to intercept? The Adamant Justice will reach us in 28 minutes. The Vanguard fleet. 17 minutes after that. Mira's mind raced. Against one patrol ship, the Soulfire Resonator might have given them a fighting chance. Against a full Vanguard flotilla, it was hopeless. Unless... Dr. Voss, she said, an idea forming. Could the Resonator affect multiple ships simultaneously? In theory, yes, if they're within broadcast range. But the power requirements would be enormous, and the calibration would need to be perfect. Voss frowned. What are you thinking? We can't defeat them through force, Mira explained. But we might be able to create enough confusion to slip past them. If we can broadcast directly into their command networks. We'd need to get much closer, Voss cautioned. And we'd need to modify the emotional matrix. Fear and hope won't be enough against trained military minds. What would be? Voss considered this. Doubt, empathy, experiences that would conflict with their mission parameters. The ship's internal communication system suddenly activated. And to everyone's surprise, the sound that emerged was a soft, clear voice singing. A lullaby. Hauntingly beautiful in its simplicity. That's Surrey, Dr. Voss identified, checking the system. She's accessed the ship's PA system from a maintenance terminal on Deck 6. Should I cut it off? Jax asked. Mira listened for a moment to the child's song, a traditional Earth melody about stars guiding travelers home. No, she decided. Let her continue. Captain, Tal questioned, clearly confused. Commander, what do you feel when you hear that song? Tal tilted his head. Listening. It is affecting, he admitted after a moment. It reminds me of my early developmental cycle, when my caretaker would emit soothing frequencies to induce rest states. Exactly, Mira said. It's universal, the comfort of childhood, the safety of being protected, emotional experiences that transcend species. She turned to Dr. Voss. Can we incorporate this into the Soulfire matrix? Voss was already working at her console, recording and integrating now. But Mira, the power requirements. Take everything, Mira decided. Life support, propulsion, shields. Everything except minimal navigation and the resonator itself. We need one perfect broadcast. That's an enormous risk, Jax warned. If the resonator fails, we'll be defenseless. We're already defenseless, Mira countered. This way, we at least have a chance. She activated the ship-wide communication system. Attention all crew and passengers. This is Captain Solari. In approximately 20 minutes, we will encounter Union military vessels. To maximize our chances of survival, we will be diverting all non-essential power to defensive systems. Prepare for temporary life support reduction and possible gravity fluctuations. This is not a drill. As the crew rushed to implement her orders, rerouting power, and preparing the ship for what might be its final stand, Mira found herself drawn to the observation deck. The vast darkness of space stretched before her, broken only by the distant stars and the approaching lights of the vessels that sought to end humanity's journey before it had truly begun. They gave us the weakest ship in the fleet, she murmured to herself. But they forgot what humans do best: adapt, improvise, and find strength in what others consider weakness. In the reflection of the viewport, She saw Commander Tal approach. The Vanguard Division doesn't deploy without explicit authorization from the highest levels of Union Command, he said, without preamble. This decision would have required Council approval. Your people really want us gone, don't they? Mira asked, still facing the stars. Not my people, Tal corrected quietly. Certain factions within the Council. Those who view humanity as problematic. Because we remind them of their own vulnerabilities, Mira suggested. Because we show them what happens when a civilization fails to change course in time. Perhaps, Tal acknowledged. Or perhaps because humans represent an unpredictable element in a carefully balanced system. Your emotional intensity, your creativity, your willingness to challenge established norms. These qualities are both your greatest strengths and what makes you dangerous in the eyes of conservative council members. Mira turned to face him. And what do you see when you look at us, Commander? Tal seemed to consider this carefully. I see a species that refuses to accept defeat, that finds hope where logic suggests none exists. His third eyelid flickered rapidly. It is admirable, if occasionally irrational. High praise from a Proximan, Mira noted with a small smile. Captain to the bridge, came the urgent call over the comm system. The Adamant Justice is hailing us. When Mira returned to the bridge, the view screen displayed Admiral Zephyrus's stern visage. The Centaurian's bony ridge had darkened to a deep crimson, a sign of heightened emotional state in his species. Captain Solari, he began without preamble. Your vessel has been designated a security risk to the Galactic Union. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. On what grounds, Admiral? Mira challenged, playing for time as she saw Dr. Voss signaling that the Soulfire resonator was nearly ready. Unauthorized possession of restricted technology, Zephyrus replied. Our scans have detected energy signatures consistent with banned psionic amplification devices. So they did know about the Soulfire technology, but how? We carry no weapons, Admiral, Mira stated truthfully. Only tools for humanity's survival. That distinction is meaningless, Zephyrus dismissed. You have 10 minutes to comply before we open fire. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Time until the Vanguard fleet arrives? Mira asked. 23 minutes, Tactical reported. The Adamant Justice will reach us in 8. Status of the Soulfire resonator? Dr. Voss looked up from her station, face drawn with concentration. Ready, but untested at this power level. We've incorporated Suri's lullaby and several other emotional recordings into the Matrix. What's the broadcast range? At maximum power? Enough to reach the Adamant Justice easily. The Vanguard fleet will be at the edge of effective range when they arrive. Mira considered their options, such as they were. They could surrender now to the Adamant Justice, likely facing imprisonment or worse. They could attempt to flee, though their chances of outrunning military vessels were practically non-existent. Or they could stand and fight, using their one untested weapon. Prepare the resonator for maximum broadcast, she decided. Target the Adamant Justice first, then expand to include the Vanguard fleet as they come into range. Captain, Jax warned. At that power level, we'll experience significant systems failure throughout the ship. Life support will be compromised on multiple decks. Understood. Issue emergency breathing apparatus to all civilians. And get Suri to the bridge, if her psionic abilities can amplify the resonator's effect. I want her here. As the crew rushed to implement her orders, Mira felt the weight of command pressing down on her. Thousands of lives, the last remnants of humanity, depended on her decision. If she was wrong, if the Soulfire technology failed, they would all perish here. Their journey ended before it began. The Adamant Justice is launching fighters, Tactical reported urgently. 6 vessels, attack formation. They're not waiting for their deadline, Jax observed grimly. Evasive maneuvers, Mira ordered. Buy us as much time as possible. The Aegis groaned in protest as its aged engines pushed it into a series of awkward defensive movements. The ship was never designed for combat maneuvers, and the strain on its structural integrity was immediately apparent. "Hull breach on Deck 9, an officer reported. "Emergency bulkheads holding. Fighter squadron closing. Weapons hot." "Resonator status?" Mira demanded. "Ready to broadcast," Dr. Voss confirmed, her fingers poised over the activation sequence. "But, Captain, we should wait until the Vanguard fleet is closer. Maximize our impact." "We may not survive that long," Mira countered, watching as the fighters closed in. "Prepare to—" The ship rocked violently as the first volley of weapons fire struck their minimal shields. Warning lights flashed across every console on the bridge. "Shields at critical. One more hit and they're gone." "Where's Surrey?" Mira asked urgently. "Here, Captain," came a small voice from the turbolift. The child entered the bridge, still clutching Admiral Splash, her eyes wide but remarkably calm, given the chaos around her. Dr. Voss quickly guided her to the science station. "Surrey, remember how you pushed that container in the cargo bay? We need you to help us push something much bigger." "The sad ships," Surrey said, nodding as if this made perfect sense. "They don't want to hurt us, but they're following orders." "That's right," Voss encouraged. "We're going to help them remember what it feels like to make their own choices." Another hit rocked the ship. "Shields down! Direct hit to propulsion!" "We're dead in space," Jax reported, his voice tight with tension. "No maneuvering capability. The fighters are circling back for another attack run." Mira made her decision. "Activate the resonator. Full power. Now." Dr. Voss initiated the sequence, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a subtle vibration began to build throughout the ship, not heard so much as felt, a resonance that seemed to connect directly with the emotional centers of the brain. On the bridge, the human crew members experienced a wave of complex emotions: grief for Earth, hope for the future, determination to survive, amplified, but not overwhelming. Commander Tal, however, staggered against his console, his skin rippling with rapid color changes. "Commander?" Mira moved to steady him.
It's intense.
Tal managed, his voice strained.
Like nothing I've experienced.
On the view screen, the approaching fighters suddenly broke formation, their flight paths becoming erratic. Some veered away from the Aegis entirely, while others simply stopped, hovering in space as if their pilots were suddenly unsure of their mission.
It's working, Dr. Voss breathed, monitoring the resonator's output.
The emotional broadcast is disrupting their neural patterns. The adamant justice is experiencing power fluctuations, Tactical reported with barely contained excitement. Their weapon systems are going offline. Mira turned to Surrey, who stood with her eyes closed, one small hand extended toward the view screen. What do you feel, Surrey? Confusion, the child answered without opening her eyes. They're remembering things they tried to forget. Some are sad. Some are afraid. The big ship's captain is very angry.
Admiral Zephyros, Mira guessed. Can you show him something else? Something beyond anger?
Surrey nodded slowly. I can show him what Admiral Splash shows me when I'm scared. That even when bad things happen, you're not alone. As Surrey concentrated, the resonator's output shifted subtly, the emotional texture becoming more complex, more nuanced. On the view screen, the adamant justice's erratic movements stabilized, though it made no move to resume its attack. The Vanguard fleet is entering broadcast range, Voss reported, adjusting frequency to compensate for distance. The resonator's vibration intensified, and with it came a new sound, Surrey's lullaby, somehow emerging from the device itself, filling the bridge with its hauntingly beautiful melody. The child's voice, clear and innocent, singing of stars guiding travelers home. What's happening? Mira asked, looking to Dr. Voss for explanation. The resonator is amplifying Surrey's psionic projection, Voss replied, her scientific detachment momentarily overcome by wonder. She's not just broadcasting emotion. She's sharing memory, experience. On the tactical display, the approaching Vanguard vessels began to slow, their formation loosening as individual captains responded to the unprecedented assault on their emotional defenses. "We're receiving transmissions from several Vanguard ships," communications reported. "They're confused. Some are questioning their orders." "The adamant justice is hailing us again," another officer called. "On screen," Mira ordered. Admiral Zephyros appeared, but his demeanor had changed dramatically. The crimson coloration of his bony ridge had faded to a dull orange, and his typically rigid posture seemed somehow diminished. "What have you done?" he demanded, though the usual force was missing from his voice. "We've reminded you what it means to feel Admiral," Mira replied steadily. "To remember that behind every tactical decision are real lives, real futures. This emotional manipulation is precisely why humans were deemed a security risk," Zephyros countered, but his words lacked conviction. "Is it manipulation to ask you to recognize our humanity?" Mira challenged. "To acknowledge our right to survive, to find a new home?" Zephyros was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted subtly. "Your ship is damaged beyond repair, Captain. You cannot reach your destination." "Then let us continue our journey in peace," Mira proposed. "Allow us to establish our colony without Union interference. We ask nothing more than the chance to rebuild." Another pause. Longer this time. Around Zephyros, his bridge crew seemed distracted, some openly emotional, an unprecedented sight among the typically stoic Union military. "Several Vanguard vessels are powering down weapons," Tactical reported in hushed tones. "Others are breaking formation." Finally, the Admiral spoke. "Your resonance technology has affected my crew in ways I cannot fully comprehend. They speak of memories they had forgotten, of connections to their own histories that policy had deemed irrelevant." His expression showed genuine confusion. How can such emotion serve any tactical purpose? "It reminds us what we're fighting for," Mira answered simply. "And sometimes, what we shouldn't be fighting at all." Another long pause. Then, remarkably, a hint of what might have been respect crossed the Admiral's features. "Your madness is impressive, Captain Solari, even as it threatens everything the Union has built." "Not threatens, Admiral, enriches." Zephyros straightened, some of his military bearing returning. "The Vanguard Division will stand down. The Adamant Justice will escort your vessel to the nearest Union repair facility. What happens after that?" He shook his head slightly. "The Council will need to reevaluate certain policies." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew of the Aegis in stunned silence. "Did we just win?" Jax asked incredulously. "Not yet," Mira cautioned, though she couldn't completely suppress a smile. "But we've earned a reprieve." She turned to Dr. Voss. "Power down the resonator before we completely drain our life support." As the vibration faded and normal operations gradually resumed, Mira crouched beside Suri, who had finally opened her eyes. The child looked exhausted but triumphant. "Admiral Splash says you kept your promise," she said, her voice tired but content. "We didn't go back. We get to find a new home." "Yes," Mira agreed, gently tucking a stray hair behind Suri's ear. "And we have you to thank for helping us remember what makes humans strong." "Not just humans," Commander Tal observed, having recovered from the resonator's effects. "All sentient beings carry emotional capacity, though few tap its full potential as humans do." "High praise from a Proximan," Mira repeated her earlier observation, but this time with genuine warmth. Tal inclined his head slightly. "I must report to my superiors on what transpired here, but I find myself reconsidering certain assumptions about humanity's place in the galactic community." "Feel free to include that in your report, Commander," Mira suggested with a small smile. Captain, Jax called from his station. The Adamant Justice is extending a tractor beam. They're preparing to tow us to the repair facility. Acknowledged. Mira turned to address the entire bridge crew. Stand down from battle stations. We've survived our first test, but our journey is far from over. As the crew dispersed to tend to repairs and check on civilians, Dr. Voss approached Mira privately. The Soulfire resonator exceeded all theoretical projections, she said, her scientific curiosity evident, particularly with Suri's enhancement. But Mira, she hesitated. What is it? The Union will never allow us to keep this technology. Not now that they've experienced its effects firsthand. Perhaps not in its current form, Mira acknowledged. But they can't erase the knowledge, the understanding that emotional connection is a power in itself. And Suri, she remains under our protection, Mira stated firmly. A child, not a weapon or a research subject. Of course, Voss agreed quickly. I only meant that her abilities will likely continue to develop. She may need specialized guidance. Then we'll provide it, Mira decided. That's what community does. Supports each member's growth while protecting their essential humanity. In the days that followed, the damaged Aegis was towed to a Union repair facility near the Helios sector, closer to their intended destination than they had managed to travel on their own. True to Admiral Zephyrus's word, they were provided with technical assistance and supplies, though Union personnel maintained a cautious distance from the human crew, as if unsure how to interact with them in the wake of the resonator incident. Commander Tal, to everyone's surprise, submitted his resignation from Union service, requesting permanent assignment as liaison to the human colony mission. His rationale, as explained to Mira in private, was simple. I have experienced something aboard this ship that I cannot explain through standard Union protocols. I wish to understand it better. Dr. Voss continued her work with Suri, helping the child understand and develop her unique abilities. Together, they created a modified version of the Soulfire resonator, one designed not as a weapon, but as a tool for cross-species communication and understanding. Jax and his engineering team worked alongside Union technicians to repair and improve the Aegis, incorporating lessons learned from their near-disastrous journey. The ship would never be state-of-the-art, but it would be sturdy enough to carry them the rest of the way to their new home. And throughout the vessel, a change had taken place among the human passengers. Where before, there had been fear and uncertainty. Now, there was a growing confidence, not in their technology or their strength, but in their resilience, their adaptability, and their capacity for emotional connection. One evening, as the repairs neared completion, Mira found herself once again on the observation deck, watching as Union vessels came and went from the facility. Commander Tal joined her, his demeanor more relaxed than she had ever seen it. Word of the Aegis of Hope's emotional victory has spread throughout the Union, he informed her. The Council is in the midst of heated debate about revising regulations to acknowledge what they're calling emotional cohesion as a strategic asset. Strategic asset, Mira repeated with a soft laugh. Leave it to bureaucracy to reduce human connection to a tactical advantage. It is a beginning, Tal pointed out. A recognition of value where before there was only dismissal. And what of our journey? Will they still allow us to establish our colony? Not only allow it, but provide additional support, Tal replied. Your people have earned a new respect, not as refugees to be tolerated, but as emotional equals with unique contributions to offer. Equals, Mira echoed, savoring the word. That's all we ever wanted. The Union gave humans the weakest ship in the fleet, Tal observed. Yet you conquered not with weapons, but with heart. That paradox will be studied for generations. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in what others perceive as weakness, Mira replied, her gaze returning to the stars beyond the viewport. to the future that now seemed not just possible, but promising. Years later, a young woman stood before a memorial on Galactic Union Station, Zenith 9. The holographic display showed a battered transport ship soaring through a field of stars. Its name, Aegis of Hope, emblazoned proudly on its hull. Though she had never known her grandmother personally, Mira Solari's legacy lived on in the thriving human colony and in the fundamental changes her journey had brought to Union policy. The young woman reached out to touch the inscription beneath the hologram, words that had become a mantra for her people. They gave us the weakest ship, and we conquered not with weapons, but with heart. Behind her, a blue-skinned Proximan and a human girl approached. Her parents, Commander Tal and Suri Lital, now respected diplomats representing the human colony in Union affairs. "Ready to go home?" Suri asked, taking her daughter's hand. "Yes," the young woman replied, casting one last glance at the memorial. "But I'm glad we came. It's important to remember how we got here." "Indeed," Tal agreed, his voice carrying the wisdom of one who had witnessed history unfold. "For it is not technology that defines a civilization's greatness, but its capacity to transform perceived weakness into unexpected strength." Together, the family turned from the memorial and walked toward their waiting ship, not a battered refugee transport, but a sleek vessel that proudly displayed both Union and human insignia, a symbol of how far they had come, and of the journey that continued with each new generation. For humanity had not merely survived, it had thrived, bringing to the stars the one thing no advanced technology could replicate: the power of the human heart.